Last week, Pastor Wendy launched a new series called The Great Exchange, and she talked about exchanging the past for the future, and that when we hold on to the past, we are holding on to it in healthy ways that can often paralyze us, and it leaves us unable to enjoy the present. And so she talked about how the past belongs in the past so that we can embrace the future. And so today I get to talk about the great exchange of exhaustion and rest. And I thought it was a joke because I know we don't know each other well, but I'm awesome at exhaustion. I'm kind of like the queen of burnout is what I like to say. And it's not that I wear busy as a badge of honor. It's just that I've walked through that season. And I'm just good at lying. I know people don't admit that, but I'm a really good liar. So if you come up to me and say, hey, how are you doing? I'll be like, I'm fine. And there's always like a really good smile and a little dimple involved because that's what I'll tell you. I am so good at being fine. I was super fine when I was working in student ministry and I was in so much pain that at the end of our worship service, my buddy Carlos would push me out to my car in my office chair. Super fine. That's normal. Very fine. I was also really fine when I had to have a big surgery and my sister flew in to take care of me. And it was really hard to even admit that I needed a surgery, but I was fine, super fine. And then I was even better when after the surgery, I sprung a leak and like all these things are like flying out of me. And I was like, I'm sure it's fine as I'm duct taping dish towels to me. And my sister's like, we probably should call 911. I was like, really? I feel fine. I was really fine on Christmas Eve, where I got to preach a Christmas Eve service. I was so fine as I stood there with a face full of sweat, my cute Christmas dress soaking wet. I was fine. But I was having an allergic reaction to the lidocaine from a lumpectomy the day before, but I was fine. It's Christmas. And I'm just such a good liar when it comes to that. I'm always fine. And I think all of us have had seasons where we tell stories that are funny because we're fine. But the reality is that we're often drowning in work and in busyness, and it's not funny at all. It wasn't funny when I couldn't sleep at night. I would wake up because of all the students in my ministries and the families and all the stress that comes with that. It wasn't funny when my phone would ding at all hours, and I would tell people, hey, today's my day off. And that was just met with, too bad, we got something for you to do. And it's just not funny. It really becomes terrifying. It wasn't funny when I was walking through a bunch of health problems. It wasn't funny for my husband or my daughter who had to watch it in real time. It was scary. And it's just terrifying when those things happen to us. And I don't think that that problem is unique to me. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. The drowning in the work, the drowning in the busyness. And I'm sure some of you are good liars. You throw on a I'm fine, and you catch yourself with that flying out of your mouth before you can even stop it, right? It's the I'm fine that might be killing us. So I found some incredible stats. I'm 42. And so it's said on the internet that the average 42-year-old experiences 2 full years of boredom. That seems like a lot. It said the average 42-year-old watches 6 months of commercials, and that's with streaming services. What a waste. 6 months. It said the average 42-year-old experiences 67 days of heartbreak. It said that the average 42-year-old experiences 14 minutes of joy. Of joy. 14 minutes. John 10:10 tells us that the thief's purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy. My purpose, God's purpose, is to give them a rich and satisfying life. Now, I've always said I was too cute to do math, but I just don't think those numbers add up. 67 days of heartbreak and 14 minutes of joy. I know that that is not the life that God intended for us. And so we can't be fine, right? And so I want to look at this really incredible account in 2 Kings. So in the Old Testament, we're going to go back to 2 Kings. And chapter 4, this might be something that you want to read this week at home. But it's a story that involves the prophet Elisha. and the Shunammite woman. And the story begins when Elijah is traveling through the city of Shunem, and he is urged by this wealthy woman to stay for a meal. And in the text, it says every time he comes to town, he would go to her house and enjoy a meal. I mean, who doesn't say yes to a free meal? But then the woman notices something special about Elisha. He notices that he is a man of God. And so she tells her husband, well, we got to do more. We got to do more for him. She sees a need and she wants to not just meet it, but she wants to minister to him, to care for him, to really provide for him. And isn't that where our desire comes from? That's how we get hooked into 2 years of being the PTS president. That's how we become room mom every year. That's how you get stuck with bringing snacks. That's what happens to you that's how you got roped into coaching your kid's softball game, right? It's that desire to do more. And so she goes to her husband. They build a small room on the roof of the house. And in the room, it's very small, just a bed, chair, and a lamp. And it's really a retreat for every time he comes to town. In verse 14, it says, Elisha is grateful. And so he asks the woman, what can I do for you? Well, she doesn't ask for anything. She has a home, she has her people, she has her friend. But Elijah's servant's name is Gehazi, and he tells the prophet, well, but her husband is old, and they have no children. And that catches Elisha off guard. So he tells Gehazi to bring the woman to him. And without vocalizing a wish or a desire or her dream, Elijah tells her in verse 16, this time next year, you will hold a son in your arms. That seems too good to be true. And the Shunammite woman knows that. And in verse 16, she goes, no, my Lord. Oh, man of God, don't deceive me and get my hopes up like that. Don't get my hopes up. Her first reaction is not excitement or gratitude or wanting to have one of those gender reveal parties on Facebook. That's not where she's living, right? Because she lives in the state of disbelief. And I don't believe it's because she doesn't have faith. I think it's the idea of believing that is too terrifying for her. Chances are, I think the Shunammite woman has spent years hoping and praying for a baby. I bet she's spent a lot of energy in her younger days thinking about what it would be like to have a family. Chances are she has this well-worn path between hope and faith and expectations and desperation. And I think that carves a heart in who she is, and in her soul, it makes her this person who isn't excited about that. Haven't we all been there? I know I've been there. You work so hard on something just to face disappointment. And I think that we can all agree at some point in our lives that we have worn a path between hope and faith. And we face disappointment in our relationships. You work really hard for this promotion at work just to be overlooked and given to the other guy. We say yes to all these opportunities because we're just looking for those to bring value to who we are. And when it doesn't bring us value, you're just left being exhausted. And so Elisha makes this promise about having a son. And so, of course, she's not jumping for joy. I think there's a part of her goes, oh, God, not again, right? She's like, I've been here. I don't want to be a part of this. Don't make me do this again. But Elisha does not make an empty promise. Sure enough, a year later, the Shunammite woman has a son. In verse 17, it says, but sure enough, the woman soon became pregnant. And at that time, the following year, she had a son, just as Elisha said. And then in verse 18, it says, the child grew. 3 words, the child grew. I think that leaves us a lot of space to imagine what those years might have been like. Probably full of joy, right? The joy that a baby brings to a family. I bet there was a lot of hope and promise brought into those years, those hope and promise, the years that it was lost, restored. I bet there were days that she felt too old to be chasing a toddler, that every time she bent down, her back ached a little bit. I'm sure that the dark lines on her face because she doesn't get much rest with the new baby. Amen. Those of you who have babies in the room, right? Not a lot of rest. But I'm also guessing that child might have been spoiled, right? They doted on him. They indulged him because he was the fulfillment of a promise. And maybe the Shunammite woman laughed more than she ever did, and she had so much joy in her life. And her life had really turned out better than she'd ever imagined. But then, there's always a but then, right? But then, in verse 18, one day he went out to his father, the son, and the father was out with the reapers in the field. And he said to his father, "My head, my head." And so the father told the servant, "Carry him to his mother." And after the servant had lifted him and carried him to his mother, the boy sat on her lap till noon, and then he died. So this day comes, the boy runs to his father, he has a headache, and like dads do, go see your mom, right? Just go see your mother. And the mother takes him and rocks him, but then he passes away. And she's sitting here with that hope and faith in her arms, gone. And I pray we've never been in that position, but we have all had a moment of our hope and our promise gone. And we get a little crazy with it, right? "Oh, I'm fine." That's what the Shunammite woman does. She's fine. And she runs out to her husband. She goes, "I'm fine, I'm fine." He's like looking at her like she's crazy. And she's like, no, go get the servants because we're going to go see Elisha. And I have been to my husband with my hair on fire before saying, we're going to do all these things. And he's like, I don't know if I should intervene or just shut up, right? Like there's moments in your relationship where the husband doesn't say anything. And I think this is it for the Shunammite woman. The husband's like, our son has just died and you want to do what? And so they get a servant and they go out to see Elisha. And as she's a ways off, Elisha sees the Shunammite woman coming, and Elisha sends his servant out to greet her. Elisha says, "Run to meet her and ask her, are you all right? Is your husband all right? Is your child all right?" And the Shunammite woman says, "Everything's all right." And there it is, the lie. That's the lie of I'm fine, right? So here's this woman who, unbelievably, after having her son in her arms, after he's died, spending decades in hoping and praying for the son, she loses him and she says, "Everything's okay. I'm fine." And that is why I wanted to share this story with you. Other parts of the Shunammite woman's life might feel unfamiliar to you, but we have all been there when everything's all right. I'm fine. And we say that because the possibility of being vulnerable is asking too much of us. Sometimes we don't feel like there are enough safe people in our lives that we can tell the real reason of why we're not okay. And people around us are depending on us. Like, I'm the person you go to when you have a problem. I can't have a problem. I'm the one shouldering the burdens for my sisters and my kid. I can't be the one that's having a breakdown. And this idea of slowing down, I mean, at least for me, I sometimes don't want to feel the pain. Sometimes we're afraid and we're angry and our disappointment. And here's the thing, if we admit all those things, I'm afraid that maybe our faith might just collapse in that moment. Because everything is all right. It's fine. And that's the moment of the great exchange. That's the moment that we choose exhaustion over rest. We tell the ones closest around us, we assure them, we curate our lives in a way that when anybody gets too close to us, we're always fine and we're always all right. And we spend so much energy masking what's really going on in our lives, right? So that when people see us, we're good. But the prophet Elisha knows she is not okay. And in verse 27, she falls to his feet and she holds on to him. And when Gehazi, his servant, tries to push her away, the prophet stops him. She is in distress, Elisha says. I don't know why, but she is not okay. And then the woman starts talking. Did I ask for a son? She says to Elisha, didn't I say not to get my hopes up? We've all been there, right? Where we wanted all these things, and when it doesn't happen, we get so angry. I mean, didn't I choose to go into student ministry so I could help others? Didn't you say yes to coaching all those hours of baseball because you wanted to build a relationship with your son? Didn't you have good intentions when you said yes to A, B, C, D, E, F, G? Didn't you have pure motives? Didn't I keep saying yes because I wanted my kids to have a better life than I had? So then why do you feel so lost and alone and burnt out and exhausted and scared of what that means to us? Saying everything is all right, but being acutely aware everything is not all right, not even close. And it scares us. And here's the thing about this story. The son comes back to life. Spoiler, son comes back to life, okay? He awakens. It's a miracle. God resurrects the son and restoring life to him. But that's not why I wanted to share this story. I didn't want to share it because of this incredible miracle at the end of it. I wonder that the point of the story is in that sometimes the easiest thing to say is the least true thing to say. And when we try to convince people around us that everything is all right, when sometimes nothing is, I wonder if the point of the story was to have the courage to fall at Jesus' feet. Not to ask him to fix anything, y'all, but just to take a posture of authenticity at his feet. To admit that we're failing, that we're not okay. We thought it might be easier than this, but it's not. And we can't make ourselves better, let alone for others, if we can't even admit what's happening in our own lives. I think what we need to say aloud, like on repeat, we are not okay. We can't be okay on our own, and we don't know what to do. That's so hard for me. I want to know what to do all the time. I don't know what to do. Elijah raised the woman's son from the dead. And sometimes I believe that we do get a resurrection in our lives. But sometimes we just need to be in the presence of God. And it's the courage in his presence that things are made right. If we can't admit it, we can't sit in it. And if we can't sit in it, we cannot go through it. And if we can't go through it, how will you ever help your family, your friends, your people go through it? We have to admit that things are not okay. And then we need to go and grab the feet of Jesus, to be in his presence. And here, as I've been prepping for this, I've really been thinking, this is really just a sermon for me, y'all. 67 pages on exhaustion. I only had 3 pages on rest, okay? It was really just for me. But what if our desire to convince ourselves that we are so fine is actually keeping us from seeing Jesus? I wonder that. What if the fakeness of, I'm okay, I never witnessed the presence of God? I believe sometimes we have to admit that we feel alone and we feel isolated to remember that we're not even alone. Sometimes we have to confess that we feel overwhelmed to experience the compassion of Jesus. Sometimes we have to admit our failings to be everything we want for everyone who wants us to be something in order to remember that Jesus can handle that way better than we ever could. Y'all need to put that on a t-shirt, right? We forget that. And I honestly believe that an authentic cry for help and falling at the feet of Jesus when everything is not okay and not all right is fine. Jesus is not asking us to pretend, and he is not asking us to push through it. Instead of pretending that we're not okay, why can't we just grab his feet and say, help me? The great exchange of exhaustion for rest, you got to get rid of the lie of I'm fine. So the rest part is hard for me, and I've thought about it a lot. And so I want us to change the idea, the word of rest. I want us to use the word Sabbath. I think there's like a different weight to the word Sabbath. The definition of Sabbath is to set apart as holy. So stop doing all the stuff that makes you tired. Now, I know y'all got to go to work tomorrow. I get that. But what if you organize yourself, you organize your life, you rearrange your calendar to actually take a day off of all the things and be okay with it? I think it should not be an anomaly that you find one Saturday every 6 months that you don't have anything to do. I think you should regularly find time to do nothing. 14 minutes of joy, that was a sad number. What if you clear and make time to do things that only bring energy and joy to your heart? The second way of finding rest in the great exchange, I think, is relationships. To connect. I'm not talking about your internet friends, because I know y'all got a lot of them. Not talking about your internet friends. I'm talking like real life-to-life, face-to-face relationships where you're fully present. Fully present. My family and I, we went on a cruise right before Christmas. It was one of our daughters graduated from college, one turned 21. It was just like the celebration cruise. And we went, and we agreed as a family, no internet, no cellular data. And so we paid for the plan that you could text on the boat so you could find each other. I did not realize how much I Googled all the things. Like we would be talking and I didn't know the answer to something. Oh, I'll Google that. No, I won't. We'll wait. Put it in the notes. Every meal, I had to look my kid in the eye. I know, some of you think I'm ridiculous, but I live in a world where we're on our phones all the time. And we're sharing things on our phone. Even though we're still talking, we're not necessarily eye to eye. We got off the cruise ship. Y'all, we were like fiends with the phones, right? We're like scrolling and we were at breakfast. And my daughter Hadley goes, y'all, look at us. We're ridiculous. And she was right. I mean, I had to see if y'all were alive. I had to go to Facebook. I had to see if you guys were still here. The church was okay. Like I had to check on all the things. But what if the idea of rest comes with relationships that are true and authentic and connecting? Maybe that's how we get to the rest. And the third way is restore. Restore back to your former self. Restore back to a health that might have been. And to get to that former self, I believe it's critical that you cultivate a life of prayer. Because we talk about going to the feet of Jesus and clinging to him. Y'all, how do you even know what the feet of Jesus look like if you're not cultivating a life of prayer and connecting to him? I mean, you don't even know where to go if you don't have any of that. And that's hard, right? So restoring our former selves, creating space for you and God to connect. Now, I don't know what it is for you. Like I said, I just wrote this for myself. How do you make the great exchange from exhaustion to rest? So I want you to trust me for a few minutes. I would love for you just to sit with your eyes closed. The band's going to come back up. And I want us to picture what may need to take place for you to find the feet of Jesus and rest. So if you'll go ahead and close your eyes with me. What do we need to do? What needs to take place for us to find true rest at the feet of Jesus? Do you need to put more faith that God has a plan for your life? Do you need to let God off the hook for something? Let God be God? Has your get-to job slowly become a have-to job? Where are you trying to earn God's love when you already have it? And what needs to be moved from your calendar and out of your life so that you can just be in the presence of God. And as we worship, the altar will be open if you need prayer to think about the exhaustion and move into the rest. God, we love you. And we are thankful for all the ways that we get to love and to serve. But God, sometimes it wears us out. And so, Father, I ask that you bring to the surface all the things that are so important in our lives, all the things that we need to say yes to, and give us a pure understanding of what we need to be saying no to. God, we know that you can lead and guide us in those ways. And so, Father, help us learn how to Sabbath. Help us learn how to have authentic relationships. And Lord, most of all, help us to see a resurrection in you and what you can do in our lives. Lord, we love you with all of our heart. Amen.